Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Mitchell, a research assistant with the Dana Foundation Career Network in Neuroscience and Society. I'm excited to be joined today by Dr. Silbersweig. Dr. Silbersweig is currently the Stanley Cobb Professor of Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, where he was also a former academic dean. He is also the chairman emeritus for the Department of Psychiatry and former director for the Institute for the Neurosciences at Brigham and Women's Hospital and the president-elect at the American Neuropsychiatric Association. He holds a Doctor of Medicine degree in psychiatry from Weill Cornell Medical College. He is a neurologist and psychiatrist and a leader in the field of neuropsychiatry and behavioral neuroscience through his scholarly work in using brain imaging to better understand the neurobiological mechanisms of psychiatric disorders such as PTSD, depression, and schizophrenia. Thank you again for joining us, Dr. David. I really appreciate your time here today. We just will get started and I want to hear more about your leading into this meeting of mental health and neuroscience and how it contributes to your area of society.
Sure. It's a pleasure, Brandon. Thank you. And the Neuroscience and Society initiative is really important. I used to study philosophy before medicine and have always had a broad interest in human nature, in society and its issues and its challenges. And so at the same time as primarily focusing in my career on trying to understand the neuropathophysiology of psychiatric and neuropsychiatric disorders, I've always had an interest in human behavior on the larger scale, if you will, in terms of complex systems. And with time, I've gotten more interested and involved in trying to bring an understanding of the human brain mind in health and disease from an evolutionary context to issues and problems that we face as a species, as Homo sapiens, in particular, problems around polarization, violence, intergroup conflict, intragroup conflict, how to potentially reduce those, how to understand those, and how to incorporate neuroscience understanding in addition to things like AI from an ethical point of view to try to see if we can't address some of these challenges or at least be part of the discussion to address them.
I think I think which the points that you raise and really understanding the intersectionality of of all this meeting and really taking that background and just like, hey, I'm not only a philosophy, I'm a philosophy background with a medical backing. I think is a very interesting area that a lot of early careerists and even students now will kind of definitely want to look into. Next question I kind of want to ease into is, can you kind of speak to what your day-to-day is as a chairman? How has your previous roles kind of complemented each other to come to this point as well?
Yeah. So, I have a lot of experience for many years doing lots of different things. In academic medicine, there are different missions: clinical, research, education, and community. And I've been involved in all of those, especially at the mind-brain interface. And then increasingly leadership, administrative, educational, and broader leadership as well. And so since stepping down as chair, a couple of years ago, I've been more free to be able to spend my time on these things that are core interests and do a lot of research and teaching and mentoring and broader work in terms of think tanks and trying to address policy. And that's been really fun and really worthwhile. My week is pretty crazy, but at this point it's less full of administrative and hospital meetings, which is great. And I'm able to meet with people like you, people like Francis Shen, who heads your program, and we're working on a number of things together. And I'm involved a lot in addition to specific projects which have to do with advancing brain imaging to develop biomarkers for neuropsychiatric disorders and improve targeting for brain stimulation therapies, which is a very active area now in neuropsychiatry, to modulate neural circuitry in a therapeutic manner. As I said, I've been more involved in these larger societal sorts of issues as well, and more broadly in terms of neuroscience. So in addition to the research and the educational things that I do and the clinical sort of consultation with regard to complex neuropsychiatric cases that may fall between the cracks of neurology and psychiatry and have diagnostic and therapeutic dilemmas and doing teaching around that. I'm involved. I'm on the steering committee of the Harvard Brain Research Initiative. I'm on the steering committee of the Harvard Mind Brain Behavior Interfaculty Initiative. I'm on the executive committee of the Harvard Medical School Center for Bioethics, and I'm involved in a think tank dealing with policy and international issues and so forth. So and as you mentioned, I'm involved in the American Neuropsychiatric Association, which is the national organization for advancing neuropsychiatry as a field. So I've been fortunate, and I am fortunate that I get to do all these things. What it means is from hour to hour in the day, whether I'm in my office at the hospital or right now sitting here speaking with you, it can be very, very different topics with very different folks and about different scales of things, which is part of what makes it exciting and fun. And I'm just thankful that I can try to contribute and be helpful in these multiple regards. But as you point out, it's really at the intersection of a lot of things. I tend to think a lot and be very involved in transdisciplinary initiatives where you look at complex issues from multiple different disciplines and try to bring the best of each discipline to create a combined or convergent lens to offer hopefully novel insights and solutions.
I think that's really amazing work. I think your extensive background and even talking to the specific projects and noticing like, hey, maybe this is maybe a brain question, but necessarily doesn't have to stop at the lab or stop at the hospital. It can reach towards our ethical minds, or it could just work towards our communities that in ways to connect these areas a little bit better and have a more connective tissue amongst these entities.
Absolutely, Brandon. And I think that's the neat thing about being able to think broadly but deeply as well. Sometimes people think you have to sacrifice depth for breadth, but hopefully we can bring rigor and obviously not necessarily expertise in each particular discipline, but deep expertise in a number of convergent disciplines and work with other people who have complementary areas of expertise to tackle these very vexing human problems. And one of the things that we try to do as healers really is to see what we can do to help, right? And that means whether it's individual patients or whether society as the patient, if you will, where things are difficult that are causing suffering. And since the brain is the organ of the mind, anything that has to do with human behavior, emotions, thought, is something that can fruitfully be addressed, at least in part, by an understanding, a contemporary understanding of the human mind brain.
That's wonderful. I really appreciate your insight. And just hearing that backing from someone within that holds such these highest titles, understand that, hey, maybe there's other work that needs to be done just besides what's right in front of me as administrator. So we appreciate your work and all that you do there. I know you kind of already spoke to a bit of a project already that really kind of centralizes this, but I want to hear more from you about sharing a project that brought that moment of tension to you, to this intersection that needed to be met within your area.
Yeah, and you're speaking presumably about something on the neuroscience and societal level.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I would say, and as I alluded to, this issue of polarization is something that is so vexing and something that I've been really focused on for a bit now, and trying to understand also the work that other people are doing in this area from a neuroscientific and social psychology point of view, or from an anthropologic and sociologic point of view. And again, trying to bring those different things together. So for instance, why is it that there is so much polarization, right, in our society? Just turn on the news, right? It's enough to, you know, uh, make make everyone stressed, right? So, and let alone when things turn to hatred and violence and misunderstandings, discrimination, all these sorts of things. So, so what's at the root of that, right?
Mhm.
As organisms. And one of the things that I've been very interested in is this notion of in groups and out groups. That we evolved, for a long period of prehistory in tribal groups, and you need to be pro-social within the group and maintain cohesion within the group. And you also sometimes need to protect the group against the people over the next hill who would come and kill you and take your land and your people and everything else like that, right? And
Mhm.
so we evolved with these systems that are adaptive on the one hand, and we have these innate tendencies and capacities. But in the contemporary world, that machinery that's still within us, in the context then also of higher order prefrontal evolution and executive control and insight and ethical restraint and constraint, etc. These are all things that we need to understand more, and understand more from a behavioral neuroscience and neuropsychiatric point of view. And what is it that causes these in group and out group distinctions? How does it work in the brain? What is it? What's the difference between pro-social and antisocial brain states and tendencies? What's going on in the brain there? How does, quote, morality even end up in all of this? And as you know, some of the most horrible things in human history have been done in the name of, quote, morality, which is why I put it in quotes. The for a, quote, superordinate great cause, people can kill other people and feel completely justified, if not morally superior, while doing it, right? And so what are the emotional, motivational, cognitive systems that are online, offline, interacting, and behavioral systems when this transpires? And how is moral cognition and decision making and differ, in group versus out group? How can we, by virtue of understanding that, understand how people are being manipulated, whether it's through politics or advertising or propaganda or indoctrination or demagogues, regimes, etc. Internet now, social media, bots, and on and on. And what's the nature of that neurobiological and psychological, neuropsychological vulnerability? And if we understand that and how it's being hacked essentially to manipulate people for ill, to harm each other, and to believe that they're doing good while doing that in the name of justice or whatever. And that's not to say that there aren't, superordinate concepts of justice and morality and so forth, but very
Mhm.
often things get very interestingly inverted, and narratives where storytelling animals and myths are very prevalent and very motivating, and give cover for a lot of terrible things, again, in the name of, ends to a means to an end, that is supposed to be, superior or important or more good or something like that. In some cases it is. How does one decide? Who gets to say? These are all very, very interesting things. Is everything relative, or can we say that there are certain things that we need to understand about, truth value and evidence-based facts and so forth, and context, although we live in an era where that's being devalued and eroded. So all of these issues can be viewed through these lenses, and the hypothesis is, that the more we understand about the neuropsychiatry, the neuropsychology, the neurobiology underlying these phenomena, the more we may be able to help. And we may even be able to work with AI, not for ill, but for good, in an ethical way, to be able to help solve these problems at scale. And so this intersection really of society, neuroscience, human brain, mind, and health and disease, AI, ethics. This is a sort of confluence that I'm very intrigued by right now, and trying to chip away at and work with others on.
I really appreciate that heavy insight into that because I think it's a very interesting point that a lot of people don't really think about the understanding of just like the concept of polarization or the idea coming into as a thought in a person and how does that relate to me or how does that relate into a way that's neurobiological has a underlying sense of neuroscience behind it that may be a bit closer to the answer to how to address these things. Really great. I appreciate that. And just finally, just so to be keep tracking of time, just one last question is for students and professionals of all levels coming into the field of neuroscience or just the idea of wanting to help society in the sciences, what advice would you give to people in that space?
I would say do it. You've got to do it. The world needs you, and don't give up, especially now when science in certain quarters is being devalued, when funding is being challenged. It may seem like a more precarious path, but science and/or medicine, these are noble pursuits that really equip you to use your intellect as well as compassion. And that's a very powerful and beautiful combination and very meaningful in one's life. And so I would say, really go for it, learn as much as you can, really reach out to people for mentorship, get involved in programs like the one you're involved in, Brandon, and keep chipping away and don't let anybody tell you that you can't. Just keep pursuing those passions and those interests and get mentorship. And then when you acquire more knowledge and experience, it allows you to try to make change in the world for the better. And it's something that again can be very fulfilling and important and impactful. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you. I think that's a very reassuring answer of just, hey, you have the idea, go out and see who wants to do it, but make sure you want to do it as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
take the initiative, and don't be shy about getting into contact with leaders in the field and people who are doing this. More often than not, they're just really excited to share with the next generation of leaders.
well, I want to say thank you again, Dr. David. It was a really great time getting to hear your insight and hear about your background and just hear about your ideas about neuroscience and society and what you feel. I think it's very important to share with the not only current professionals, but as you said, the next generation to come behind, after us.
Yeah, well, that's you and your colleagues, Brandon. So do it, and really appreciate your insightful questions.